Okay, so we've talked about the Red Scare, we've talked about communism, we've talked about the Palmer raids, we've talked about the Emergency Quota Act, we've talked about the National Origins Act, how this fear, this mass hysteria of the spread of communism to America leads us to pass legislation to restrict the number of immigrants into the United States. So we're going to move on a little bit. We're also going to add some amendments to the U.S. Constitution. All right. So the first one that we're going to add is the 18th Amendment, and then the second one we're going to add is the 19th Amendment. So we'll take a second and look at those. Okay, so this is kind of, the unit with the fun stuff. The Palmer raids, the Red Scare, that's all really very interesting. And so are the amendments. The 18th Amendment, again, that's one of your vocab terms, and so is the 19th. The 18th Amendment is the ban on alcohol. This is the time of prohibition in the United States, okay? Prohibition. Do you remember the Great Awakening and the Second Great Awakening and the temperance movement, where the abuse at home, the lack of the males to fulfill their obligations and responsibilities led women to push for the removal of alcohol, the temperance movement, right? So that was the noble experiment. But the 18th Amendment is going to prohibit the manufacture, the sale, and the transportation of intoxicating liquors. I want you to think about Al Capone. I want you to think about bootleggers, people who tried to make their own alcohol, to try and sneak it into businesses, to try and sell it to people undercover. This is the birth of organized crime in the United States. All right, so the impact that the time of prohibition is going to cause is going to be organized crime is going to rise up to kind of find its way around the ban on alcohol. Bootleggers, people who are going to sneak booze in, they're going to sell it because it's illegal. That's why they're called bootleggers. We talk about the term bootleggers and people who bootleg movies and bootleg music, doing it illegally, selling it illegally. And then you have your flappers and your speakeasies, the secret bars and locations where people could go and drink. Al Capone, there's plenty of movies on Al Capone and his organized crime group. That'd be a great thing for you to look up. Then there's the 19th Amendment. Remember the Seneca Falls Convention and Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and they wrote the Declaration of the Rights of Women. It's also mentioned in the musical Hamilton, that this idea that they were pushing for women to get the right to vote. And, initially not all women wanted the right to vote, but now we're starting to see that women are pushing for the right to vote even more so, to see themselves on a more equal playing field with men. Okay, so the 19th Amendment will give women the right to vote. It is an extension of the Seneca Falls Convention. Those women who fight for the right to vote, for women's suffrage, suffragettes, they would use motorcades, drive through cities, advertise what they were, women's right to vote. They would use civil demonstrations, protests in front of the White House. And this symbolized greater equality for women. And I want you to think for a minute why getting the right to vote would change gender roles. Why would it change the roles between men and women in society? Think about what it means for a woman who's never been able to vote before to start having an impact and a say in politics and legislation, even running for office. Okay, why would that impact gender roles? Why would that change the dynamic between men and women in society and at home?